I'm Stephen Foskett, organizer of Tech Field Day and publisher of Gestalt IT, and we're here at Cloud Field Day 15 to record a few roundtable discussions with our Cloud Field Day delegates. We're starting off here at Cloud Field Day with the rise of the supercloud. And what do I mean by that? Well, there's been a lot of talk in the industry, especially when it comes to enterprise cloud, about being cloud agnostic or using multiple clouds, having a multi-cloud strategy. And similarly, there's been a lot of talk at our field day events with companies coming up with overlays that go over the public clouds and provide additional services or a superset or even a subset of services. And at the same time, I'm hearing more and more companies talk about that sort of idea of a cloud of clouds as a super cloud. And so I wanted to pose that to the delegates to get your perspective on this. I guess, first of all, let me just start with this. Have you heard this supercloud term before or not? So if any of you are like, oh yeah, I hear about this all the time, or if any of you are like, nope, never heard it before until you mentioned it just now, who's heard about it all the time? Does anybody want to say?
Without tongue in cheek?
Yeah.
I heard it on Twitter, like, I want to say like a week ago, and I just rolled my eyes. Literally, I think it rolled back very hard. Like, I'm just saying, like, do we need another term for multiple clouds?
Well, I mean, we've even had a few this week that have gone introduced, like polycloud was a brand new one for me. But at the same time, yeah, it's, a cloud is a cloud. And I mean, I think hybrid cloud should still be kind of like the de facto standard, because whether it's here, there, or everywhere, it's still the same concept.
What does hybrid cloud mean?
Exactly. I think hybrid cloud tends to have a connotation of on-premises plus cloud.
Yeah.
Whereas I think the polycloud, metacloud, supercloud, I'm going to call it subcloud.
Hybrid cloud is mode 1 cloud, and then supercloud is mode 2 cloud, to coin the other.
But based off of that
term that I was just going to use a very unfortunate word in front of it, but that words like supercloud are defined by people that are not actually doing real cloud stuff. There, I said it.
We need to be very careful off our definitions, though, because if hybrid cloud is an on-premise piece, then supercloud would have to remove on-premise. So you can't have supercloud if it doesn't include on-premise. And by removing that, then you kind of remove a pretty big factor of what cloud is. I mean, like hybrid cloud is called hybrid cloud mainly because at the time we didn't think that on-premises solutions,
Gollum appreciates that,
was deployed in a way that could be defined as cloud. I've said this on a different roundtable. I'll say it again. And cloud is a self-service solution that is built upon a platform that allows you to deploy whatever resources that you need in a self-service way. That factoid, now we see that in the private cloud. And so it's difficult to say that the private cloud, quote unquote, is still part of that hybrid cloud solution, because now we have self-service in both locations. So maybe another way of looking at it is hybrid cloud no longer a term we should use, and we should fully embrace supercloud.
And I guess this is the core. So what I'm hearing from you is no, supercloud is not an accepted term. And that's actually, I asked that on Twitter the other day. Is this a term that we're all agreeing on? And it's interesting because I got a lot of responses to that. That was a big thread. And most of the responses fell into two camps. Regular cloud people saying, what? No. Or heck no, or I hate it, or that's not something I'm using, or whatever. And analysts and marketing people for product companies saying, oh yeah, we need a term, and that's the term we're going to use. And I guess maybe I'll pose that to you. If this becomes the term, are you ready to accept supercloud as the cloud of clouds?
No.
This could go all the way back to cloud, because cloud is a very unfortunate marketing term that has become an accepted way to talk about infrastructure.
Yes.
And I think that's why we're getting into this mess. Is it a super cloud? Is it a hybrid cloud? Or is it architecture that is based on a cloud principles? on those cloud-like principles. There's different ways I say it than saying multi-cloud. And I do think a lot of this is from people, number one, that don't understand, maybe they don't understand the technologies and what they're asking. And a lot of the reasons they don't is because they are focused on the story of what's going to sell their product and get their product into a new area versus what is good for the entire industry.
And the other thing that we need to remember when we think about a cloud operating model and all these different pieces, like what Gina said is absolutely true when we think about cloud being this unfortunate thing to describe infrastructure, because at the end of the day, everything is infrastructure. I'll throw another buzz phrase, which is fun to always remember, which is there is no cloud. It's just someone else's computer. If I had a data center that for me was a on-premises data center that was running a privatized cloud, but then I allowed other people to consume my services, then I am in effect a cloud. Now, that being the definition of cloud, Supercloud, by that definition of a cloud of clouds, is still cloud.
Yeah. Supercloud triggers the next phase of douchebaggery, which is cloudless.
No, please.
Right, where you're effectively just pushing a thing. It doesn't matter where it lands. You don't have to care about what's underneath it. So that the actual landing destination does not matter. It could be in Azure, it could be in Alibaba, it could be in Oracle cloud infrastructure. And that's like conceptually the supercloud idea is that is entirely abstracted away, and that immediately moves us to this next thing. It is an interesting idea. Yeah.
See my eye roll. Cloudless. Oh dear.
I think the point is that it's cloud infrastructure. It's cloud computing, right? And the term cloud got abstracted away because it was fun to market around and make t-shirts and all the rest of it. And we use the term cloud, but we're really talking about cloud computing and those workloads. What does that look like? And then the whole pizza pie charts describe it. But there's still, that's why we have to stay on premises. Like we're not describing technically what these things are. Supercloud is absolutely a marketing analyst firm word. It's not necessarily going to do anything to clear up what we're talking about.
No, it's going to confuse people more.
First of all, there's a bunch of buzzwords in the middle. I don't believe in Supercloud. By the way, it's the first time that I heard this word. But from cloud, hybrid cloud, private cloud, local, not cloud, Supercloud want to add polycloud or something. Multi-cloud. Now the point is multi-cloud. The one is the buzzword. But I think that, as told back, it's the infrastructure. Well, different if we're talking about native cloud, but it's another matter. But I think the cloud. What's the difference between supercloud and multi-cloud?
Well, so here's the thing that I'm getting from y'all, and it feels to me like there's a visceral reaction of like an eye rolling reflex of we don't need another term. Oh my gosh, how are they going to abuse this term and misuse this term and misconstrue this term just like they've done to all the other terms? And I feel it too. I get so frustrated with software defined, right? That was my, suddenly software defined just meant software with an extra word attached to it, right? And that's super frustrating to me. But the thing is, I think that cloud is a thing, even though we don't want it to be, and even though it's misused and abused all the time. And I think it's not just someone else's computer, right? And I think Eric would agree with me on this one, right? Because it implies a whole consumption model and workload model that's different. And similarly, I think that the idea of hybrid cloud or the idea of multi-cloud, super cloud, meta cloud, whatever you're going to call it, is an important thing if only we could get there. If only we could get to the point where you were using the term correctly, or at least consistently. Like, I don't care what the term is. I just want it to be consistent. Like, we could call it literally anything. We could call it like Cloud 3. And as long as we were consistent in what that means, I'm going to be okay with that. But I think that the risk is that we wouldn't use it consistently, and that everybody, just like they did with all these other things, they would just decide that whatever it is that they make now fits into this new exciting definition, and then the term loses all meanings, right?
So multi-cloud, it's it's a description of what you're functionally doing in your business, right? If you've got SaaS, that's cloud. And please, whoever says it's not cloud, you just need to back up from me, okay? Because SaaS is cloud, IaaS is cloud, PaaS is cloud. It's all forms of cloud. And if they're in multiple locations, multi-cloud.
It's an operating model.
Yeah, like it makes sense. But when you start like saying, oh, well, SaaS isn't cloud and this isn't cloud, or only this is considered multi-cloud, well, you're just confusing everything. And you throw Supercloud into it. Now, what the hell is Supercloud?
We get caught up even in the smallest thing. We still don't even have consistency. Is it multi-cloud, multi-cloud? Like we literally are still hung up on even how to write the word, let alone what the definition. Like it's like manager of managers. I think Supercloud to me is like manager of managers. The concept that there's a single common software as a semantic representation of other underlying software that has its own front end, and it becomes now this super front end. Uber front end, whatever the big word is.
Cloud. I mean, it's an orchestrator.
Correct, right? As the Supercloud itself is not a cloud. That's actually a great point.
Yeah.
So could kind of the emergence of this term just be a signal that there's a desire to move from proprietary services to more of a pure utility model? And right now that just happens to require an additional level of abstraction. But if this is what customers are demanding, these platforms could actually be built to be interoperable.
Let me jump in on that topic because I think that is a really good point when we're talking about all these different things with cloud. Because when we talk about managers, cloud is a cloud of of other clouds, and what you said about multi-cloud, these are just definition models that describe functions and services and vendors, right? And what they're actually trying to target. Adding to what was just said, this is something that we're already seeing from people like VMware. Aria that they've just announced is focused around, they use the term multi-cloud, but you could easily say that's a super cloud product because what it is it's an orchestrator that connects and builds in multiple different clouds.
And I think that this is all,
love that.
This all comes from a genuine desire on the part of enterprises to not be beholden to a single cloud provider or a single cloud platform. And I think that there's this idea that they need to have multiple cloud providers, either for to avoid vendor lock-in or to get access to different kinds of services or to access lower priced competition, and that a lot of these products are kind of targeting those needs and trying to build something that would allow them to do that. Yeah, Gina.
No, this is not them building. These companies are building products that don't have a market for them yet. And they're trying to figure out how to create the right words so that they can market the products and get in front of people and sell the product. So how does what are we calling it? Mega cloud, ultra cloud, whatever. How does that solve a problem? Are people looking to go to something that's mega? And just by definition, that sounds like it's very complex. And that sounds like that's the argument and the story they're trying to sell. Oh, it's so complex to go to any platform you want. We cover the mega, ultra, whatever cloud we're talking. It's like almost like what are those balls called in that game? Not Tamagotchi, but
well, the idea was
that's what it is. Let's absorb them all. And you've absorbed them all, and now we're going to smooth it all over. This is not a technical thing. This is a thing to create a market by an analyst firm. That's what this is.
Okay, so first of all, Gina, you just unknowingly coined a better name for this, which is the Katamari Cloud.
Is it Katamari?
And
that's right. That's right.
Okay, so we're going to go with that. Second of all, I think that the idea. So I asked that question, and the idea was that super is like superset, that you would be able to access the special features of all the clouds. Because my feeling was that it was actually not a super cloud, but a sub cloud, because it would be a sort of the lowest common denominator across all these clouds, and that you would lose all the differentiating features of all these clouds, and you would end up with a really basic cloud, because that was the only thing that was supported across every cloud provider. But instead, the idea is allegedly that you would expose all the unique value propositions of each cloud in a way that they could seamlessly be used. So it was really a superset, not just a tremendous cloud.
And that's going to work because product building is not political at all. It's not based on who likes who and who wants to do who and who wants to open up their good stuff to anybody else to partner with. That is just not practical from a business sense or a technical sense. I just think it's silliness, and it clouds the water. And I really believe that it's just trying to find a new market to open up so people can make sense of these hard things. But we are all engineers, and we should be able to understand and make sense of these hard things and solve the hard problems.
So let me say that me, like Raf, this is the first time I heard Supercloud. Yeah.
It's not popular in Italy.
Yeah.
Friendly, yeah.
It's not yet used, but yeah, the idea around what I heard here in this table, what I said, Stephen, right now, is that this is a subcloud, and I feel that something is technically is growing around this word. I mean, if you talk about what is the real element that is common to every cloud, and what is the right operative model that we can put on top. And here you can find, obviously, infrastructure as a service, as Nat said before. For example, VMware is doing a kind of super cloud because it's going to deliver its solution around many cloud providers, you know. But I think that there is something more. Keep in mind, for example, just for example, the serverless, something that was proprietary of one specific cloud, thinking about Lambda, thinking about the kind of services. Now you can have a platform serverless that is common, that you can deploy in every cloud to have the same operative model, and try to introduce something that is more easy to manage, easy to operate better, but is not so easy to install, obviously. Or someone can provide it for you, like it happened with VMware, right? And I think that we are playing with yes, pass, and pass more to establish new services, but it is really a sub cloud, not
Another word.
There's
obviously, because you cannot use, for example, in this if you move from AI/ML specific for one cloud, there is not a common operating model from Azure to AWS to GCP, for example, right?
But this is something separate, I think. As opposed, this is something that Gina told before. This is computing cloud separated by native cloud. You were talking about serverless, so this is functions as a service if we want to talk about another. But I believe this is something different and couldn't.
Yeah, I agree.
This is not native, right? This is something that we could put on every public cloud, but this is
cloud as a service.
Well, but I think I think what Raf is saying, and I think that we need to accept this is so the super cloud term is not referring to serverless.
Yeah,
it's not referring to function as a service or anything. It's referring to specifically cloud infrastructure. Still, like Gina pointed out earlier, this is still infrastructure as a service. It's just infrastructure as a service that uses multiple providers.
Okay.
Or that uses a layer on top of providers. And theoretically, and again, I will say that my understanding is that this would subsume hybrid cloud as well, because you could have your own on-premises cloud, the private cloud that was part of the super cloud as well. At least that's what I understand where they're going with this, where the analysts are going with this.
There's this concept in the old days called storage virtualization, where you had a single storage system that would talk to other storage systems and provide a single interface to all that data. And the advantage you had there is it's all on premises and it's all behind the this one system. But that system was more sophisticated than literally any of the other subsystems that were out there. And it provided actually more functionality, caching, more virtualization, more types of advanced functionality. If you could do that with some piece of software that was not only a superset of all the functionality that exists underneath it, but even a bigger set that provided additional functionality, in this case, cross-cloud functionality, then maybe you might have something. But we're talking serious software.
And that's actually a good point, because we've heard of cross-cloud services as well as another way, I think, of describing this concept.
If I was going to define Supercloud, how I would define Supercloud, I think building on that cross-cloud, I think a lot of people would fall back to this idea of picking the service that fits the need in the cloud across all the different parties that have IaaS, PaaS, and SaaS solutions. What that means is that you're not just vendor locked into Azure, AWS, or GCP. What that means is you're using storage with something like what NetApp showed us, and you're able to have storage across the board. Okay, now how do I connect my networking across the board? Well, that's where something like, I'm bringing vendors that we've seen, like Proximo, can create connections between different clouds and solutions. And so now you have networking across the board. Well, how do I have compute across the board to make sure that that compute can then talk across the cloud, right? So you're building these layers that we already have in the data center, and we built in the data center based off of the needs that the business requires of us, and the organization requires of us. Now, when we move into the cloud, we run into other problems. We run into vendor lock-in. We run into feature sets that become so core to the business operating model that when they all of a sudden say, nope, we're not going to use that anymore. Now, customers are like, well, now I got to find a different cloud. Well, guess what? You're still stuck. And so the idea of Supercloud as a model and as a definition, I am pro Supercloud. I just don't think it exists right now. I also think it's a pretty dumb thing to call it, because at the end of the day, what are we going to call it? We're going to call it the next data center.
We've actually identified two specific models that are very interesting. Adam talked about the idea of a single semantic representation, which is common to all of the underclouds, that then can be presented as like an open and unopinionated supercloud. But Ray brought up the even more important point, is as a market opportunity, an opinionated advantage layer that offers something greater than any of the single clouds can offer. So we actually have there's two super clouds. That is an interesting idea. Like there's two ways in which you can go. I actually separate if I think of super cloud, and if you limit it to IaaS, it's not a super cloud. It is super IaaS.
Well,
wait.
First of all, the undercloud is the cloud sewer. Let's just start with that.
Well, I think we have this today. We have an API and a layer and an abstraction that can do this, and it's called Kubernetes. You can run a control plane across multiple clouds, whether they're on premises or in some other public provider, and now make definitions for the kinds of resources that are available specific to these clouds. Like you may get GPUs in one and not another, and now you can just launch workloads and have the scheduler orchestrate where those go.
Well, but the thing there though is while you can do that, it's not a consistent workflow as you go from cloud to cloud to cloud, even though it's Kubernetes, but it's the EKS implementation of Kubernetes. It's the K3S.
You could run your own nodes, do your own nodes, and deploy.
Yeah, so to build it on it from an operations perspective, because Calvin, you're absolutely right. From a developer perspective, it's the same thing across the board. Kubernetes is going to be the same thing across the board, across all the different clouds. It just is. That's why we love this platform so much. Where it fails, and where your point is actually correct, Jim, is the things outside of Kubernetes, the CNI, the CSI, and things like that. Like that's where you're going to run into your problems. The application will run fine, but you're not going to have the same data when you go cross clouds. You're not going to have, well, you may have the same networking, but again, you're being prey victim to, we're not going to, have that networking anymore and zoink it out, right?
So I think everybody's saying really good things and very similar things. And I liked Ray's point, and you said something about just data centers and connecting. To me, the thing with the supercloud term is something we will have to spend redefining for a very, very, very long time. When in reality, if you think about this, is just to be very super simplistic. We did fight about what we called colos and DR sites and everything else when we had just on-premises data centers. So the idea of having this, and someone was DMing me, so I don't want to bring up his name, who was also watching, but it's like, you might still be on that thing, but you have to have something like you guys are talking about to run things cross cloud, and we have different services that are doing that and building that out now. So are they super cloud deliverers, or you know what I'm saying? So this turns into this big abstracted thing to have cute t-shirts and make quippy little marketing slogans with. But then when you go in to actually talk to a customer about what the problem is, and how your solution solves it, you have to define a super cloud in this whole new thing because they've seen this every place in the world. And it doesn't really make any sense because what we're dealing with is infrastructures and how do we span them and be able to take the best from each one, just like you started out with the beginning.
Exactly. And that I think is the key here, Gina. Thank you. And thank you to whoever that is. That's really the key. If we are just making, and I would argue that Kubernetes is only going to allow us really to do the basic mechanics of multi-cloud. If we're going to make the best of this, if we're going to have services that can be more seamless and allow you to use different cloud providers in a real, true, whatever you're going to call it, super cloud, meta cloud, whatever, then what we really need are intelligent services that can really make the most out of each one and intelligently decide where to place workloads for various different reasons. Like I said at the beginning, whether it's cost or features or whatever, co-location of data and data gravity and things like that. I mean, these are all things that are important. And I will say, just to wrap up this conversation, I think we are entering the era of the super cloud, whether we would like it or not, whether we like the term or not. We're going to hear about this. This is going to be a massive trend in enterprise tech and a massive trend from the analysts and the press. And then eventually it's going to trickle down into the CIOs and you are going to have CIOs saying, hey, we want me one of them super clouds. What is it? And we're going to have an answer to that. And I think that I'll just say my opinionated thing is I think the answer to that has to be that the super cloud or whatever you're going to call it has to deliver this. It has to deliver the best of all of the constituent clouds, whether it's on premises or Google or Amazon or whoever, Tencent. It has to deliver the best of each of those on various different aspects of cost and features and preferences. And it has to do that in a seamless way. And yeah, if a solution is just doing the same old thing and they're just calling it super cloud, we have to be ready to shout that down and hold our nose about the term, but shout it down anyway, because it can't just be another term. I mean, we words mean things. We got to stop this whatever I have is the new thing because I just called it that. And then the word doesn't mean anything anymore. And then somebody invents a new word. We got to stop that from happening so that at least there's some understanding in the market of what this stuff is.
FYI, there's a Finnish service provider called Supercloud.
I'm sure they're going to really enjoy the Gartner.
So that means I should start the print run of my bumper stickers and say my other cloud is a super cloud.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, and I'm sure they're going to really enjoy the inevitable magic quadrant that leaves them off.